Well, perfect. Kim, thank you so much for jumping onto the podcast. I'm really excited to chat about what we're going into today.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I have to ask, is this your first podcast?
No.
Really? Okay. So you've been on
No,
one before.
I have. I did a live webinar, a live Q&A for a few years. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but
Yeah.
I've done that. I've done not many. I've done maybe a handful, four or five. So
Awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind just letting everyone know your background and maybe it'll open up why we're talking today, and then I'll hit you with my first question.
absolutely. Well, I am a mental health provider, so I have been practicing and working with clients in the mental health field, mostly adults, for about 25 years. And I love it. I love what I do. I have some pretty high specialties. Over the years, you kind of develop that, uh, hopefully, you kind of
Yeah.
develop your lane that you're best at. So I work only with adults. I work a lot with sexual dysfunctions and couples and anything from addictions and compulsions to betrayal and that kind of
Mm.
thing. But I also do general mental health for men and women, depression, anxiety, life transition, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
passionate about it, love it. Happy to answer any questions or have a interesting discussion maybe today. So
Yeah, well, again, I really appreciate you jumping on, and it's definitely something that I've gotten more passionate about and interested in myself because I've gone through my own mental health journey, I would call it, where I've been down in the dumps quite a bit, and I think a lot of it. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I was sick starting in 2021 around there, um, which we didn't really know what was going on with me. Eventually, we found out I have a tumor in my pituitary gland that's kind of damaged the hormone production in there. So my hormones were off balance for quite some time, and during that time, it was really difficult to one focus, two manage my mood, because at the time my testosterone was really really low. I think when I was first diagnosed and they first did my blood work, it was at 53, which is yeah, I think it's toddlers
almost
have more
non-existent.
testosterone than that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, it was definitely a journey, and things happened where I was depressed and I felt like I was broken and didn't really know how to talk about it with anyone, and it was a weird time because I felt like I was stuck, but also a little bit intimidated by asking for help because I follow all these Navy SEALs and I read all these books that people in the military write, and I love that kind of stuff. And they're always like, you just got to push through, you got to dig deep and fight those feelings. But every time I would try and do that, it would never really work. And yeah, I think the first time I asked for help, I felt kind of shamed to do it in a sense, because I looked at myself as this tough guy who could handle anything, but at the end of the day, that was not the case. And I just at the time didn't have the tools that I now know to help me with some of those things. But um, long way to ask my first question.
No,
But
I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it might just give some context.
Yeah.
Yeah, but why do you think men often struggle to talk openly about their emotions and even their mental health?
Well, I think that men are not typically trained to do that from birth. I don't
Yeah,
think most times when and I'm generalizing, stereotyping, of course, but in general, I think men are not given emotional language. They just aren't. I think they're not given ways to say how they feel, or they're really just taught to deal with it or to ignore it.
yeah,
And there are times and occasions when you do have to do that. We all have to, right? We're not going to, you know, sit in our feelings all day, every day. It just isn't
right.
possible. We have to function. Um, so there's a balance we have to strike there. But I do think the pendulum swings pretty hard to the side of um, not having language and not feeling able to say what's going on, and sometimes not even knowing what is going on, just knowing that I don't feel right. And no
Yeah.
matter what I do, I can't make it better. No matter what I read, no matter how much I run or go to the gym or hang out with buddies,
Yeah.
anything, no matter what I do, I come back to the same feeling. Um, and, mental and emotional health are very complex issues, just like the body. Like you have something, and they're intricately intertwined. So you had emotions going on a few years back that were pretty intense, but there was also some physiology that was
Mm.
exacerbating, the emotions. But um, I think men try and push through, as do women. So I don't want to say that it's just men, but I think men have more of a propensity to push through and just like, buck up, just pull themselves up by the bootstraps,
Yeah.
and a lot of times it's social that way. You go to a dad or an uncle and they're like, dude, I don't know, just deal with it. They don't
Yeah.
have any answers because that's the answer they were given. Um, so that's a big general overview, but I just think it's socially unacceptable on a large scale because men perceive themselves as weak, maybe if they have feelings that they can't control or they don't
Yeah.
know how to feel better, um, which would make sense why they would maybe avoid reaching out for help. They wouldn't hesitate if they had a, sore muscle or a
Yeah.
pink neck to go to the chiropractor. But
Right.
like if they have a feeling they can't overcome, so I'm not going to the shrink. I'm not going to do that. That's for whatever, that put me in that category.
Yeah.
I do think we're improving. Each generation is improving because my generation, I always call us the Oprah generation. That's when Oprah started talking about feelings on TV. And so we were all like, oh, we have feelings.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily good at them, but I think the millennial generation and the Zoomers and some of the generations coming behind us are much more apt to ask for help and to recognize those things. And the shame, I feel like, is starting to reduce around mental
Yeah.
health a little. So that's positive.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, it is June, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to reach out. Is I was talking to Allie, and I was like, this is the first time I remember it being Men's Mental Health Month. Um, so I'm hoping that that stigma is going away. But you were talking a little bit about emotional language, and I'm curious if you can give an example of that.
When I talk about emotional language, it's just being able to speak emotion, being
Hmm.
able to speak feeling. Like I feel sad, I feel mad, I feel lonely, I
Yeah.
feel I feel shame, I feel um, discouraged, whatever. I feel overwhelmed. Those are all, for some men, those are very synonymous with weak.
Mm.
Like somehow I should be able to just magically figure those out at
Yeah.
21 and 22 and 17 and 43 and all the things. And a lot of times we do figure them out over time. They dissipate, but there are, when it's tied to other issues, like something physiological, or even something going on in our life, like some sort of loss or some sort of
Mm.
out of control losses that we can't manage on our own,
Yeah.
or maybe even something that might be, like clinical levels of depression or anxiety or something. We don't manage that any more than I would manage my blood pressure if I was hypertensive. Not the kind of hypertensive because maybe I'm overweight, but the kind of hypertensive I'm born with. I don't just raise and lower my blood pressure
Yeah.
at will. And so why we expect that people can sometimes do that with feelings, with emotions, um, I don't know why we've done that, but that's what we've done. And
Yeah.
I guess that's why I have a job. So
Yeah. I mean, it is something that's a need. Like I yeah, my own experience taught me that. That's I like you said wasn't necessarily given the tools growing up in school, and like my parents did a great job at like helping me through emotions, but never no shame to them, but like helping me understand like, oh, when you're feeling sad, here's what you should be doing, here's the thoughts you should be telling yourself. Because my issue, and I'm sure this is kind of similar in some men, but is I would have like a depressive thought, and then I would say, man, why is this happening to me? Like, am I actually broken? And then it was like this vicious cycle where I would just continue to always just beat myself down. And That's one thing Allie and I actually, she helped me a lot with when we first got married, was my own mental voice, like the voice that I would have that would talk to me like in any way, if that makes sense. But like my internal dialogue was just pretty rough. I would always beat myself up, and it wasn't good. And she's helped me rewire that and realize that those are just incorrect thoughts. They're not necessarily real. And do you know who Dr. Amen is?
Yes.
So I actually was listening to a podcast from him today, and he was saying that when you feel like you are in that sense of like you're depressed or you have these anxious thoughts or these other feelings, your brain thinks that your body's hurt or something like that, and because of that, you're like your brain's trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I get rid of this? How can I fix this problem? And yeah, I think it just becomes a vicious cycle where you can't get out of, and you have to ask for help at some point.
Right. Because that cycle is just fueled by, so if we weren't to go the shame route and just say my brain's trying to heal itself, it's trying to figure things out, but
Yeah,
sometimes in that process, the messaging's no bueno. The messaging's not useful, not helpful.
yeah,
Because sometimes we try and motivate ourselves by the messages that maybe we've inadvertently received, even well-meaning. There's a lot of
yeah,
well-meaning and well-intended messages out there about just deal with it. I bet so and so. We start comparing ourselves to others. We start, and that cycle, like you said, starts. It takes on a life of its own, and now we don't know. Am my body sick? Am my head sick? Am my heart sick? Am I spiritual sick?
mm,
Like, well, it all kind of becomes this. Um, it kind of grows, kind of like snowballs, down
yeah,
going down a mountain. But I think what Allie's done for you, what you guys are figuring out is amazing. Because to me, the inner voice. So there's the being able to speak into emotion and know what emotion is, and then there's being able to recognize my own inner dialogue and what's true and what's false.
hmm,
And false inner dialogue is powerful. It's powerful because we're in our head a lot. We're driving, we're looking, we're on
yeah,
social media, we're
yeah,
alone, we're at work, and um, that dialogue matters because we tend to follow it. Now, if I've got a chemical imbalance of some sort or um, some other maybe diagnosable issue, that's where we come into play. That's where we
yeah,
can say, this is not in your control. And let me tell you why. And the more you try and fix it with all of the well-intended advice
yeah,
given by well-intended people, the more crappy you'll feel because it seems to work for everyone else. Why isn't it working for me? And now I've got something else to, you know, put in my what's wrong with me bucket. Which, if you're familiar with Dr. Brene Brown, she's like famous in the world.
yeah, yeah,
She's a shame researcher, and her stuff is so good. I would highly recommend men or women. Men, she's a woman, so it's kind of written, I think,
yeah,
in
yeah,
her language, but it is so applicable for both. Learning how to challenge shame-based belief systems that are well established, even by our teenage years. And we don't even need a parent or anyone else to tell you. We tell ourselves.
yeah.
Even
It
our
really is
peers
true.
are like, you suck, I suck. We get it in our head, and then so changing that takes effort, and you have to be really, really intentional about it. You have to recognize that first of all, you have to be willing to see what's going on and admit to it, and then you have and until we can't change anything we don't acknowledge. Once we
Yeah.
acknowledge it, we can make the change.
How do you recognize those feelings or those thoughts?
I say this is just me. I don't know. This is not based on research. This is just me, but um, I tend to think that the body never lies.
Hmm.
So, and I'm not a super body aware person. I'm old, and I've had to continue to learn how to listen to my body signals when I'm feeling shame. Where do I feel shame? I tend to feel it in my head. I just start tingling from the head down. When I'm
Interesting.
embarrassed, when I feel, upset, mad at myself, I've done something wrong, I tend to feel it in my head. When I feel anxiety, I tend to feel it in my stomach.
Hmm.
I get a pit in my stomach. It's like, it's like an ache. It's like a burn. I don't think our body lies. We just spend a lot of time not listening to our body. and trying to ignore it. So I will often tell people, listen to your body signals first. They will tell you, and you need to learn where these things live in your body. And so
Yeah.
if I say, where are you feeling that? Like, where are you feeling that shame, or where are you feeling that like embarrassment? And some people will be like, oh my gosh, behind my eyes, or my ears are hurting, or
Yeah.
so that's a good place to start, is to
Okay.
just to take a moment. I mean, we call this mindfulness in the world of mental health sometimes, but just take a moment to be present and just kind of body scan head to toe. What am I feeling? And oh, that's sadness. I usually feel that straight in my chest.
Yeah.
That's when I can't hardly swallow, when I can't hardly breathe. That's when I'm sad. Um, anger is my shoulders. I just wear my shoulders like earrings, just, like I can hold
Yeah.
it. So it's just being aware,
Hmm.
and then I can address the emotion. Then I can be like, okay, what do I need to do? Do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to confront something? Do I need to take a nap? Like, what do I need to do to deal with it?
Yeah. That's interesting. Now that you got me thinking about that, I recognize, like, I've always been a worrier. Ever since I was a little kid, we lived in Arizona growing up, and like I was deathly terrified of tornadoes, and they don't happen in Arizona. But like as a kid, I was like, it's gonna happen. Every time there was a dust storm, I was like, this is it, and I just feel like this pit in my stomach, like you were talking about. Um, but then when I'm like anxious for something, like if I have a presentation at work, it's in my chest.
Yes.
So it's kind of interesting. Now that you're saying that, it's like that makes a lot of sense to me.
And I
Um, uh,
think men and women, but men tend to be pretty in tune with their body. I think sometimes, I hopefully, I mean, they're oftentimes they're physical.
yeah,
They're involved with their body. They're trying to figure things out. Sometimes they just need to add the emotional piece to it. It's not just that your shoulders ache. You might be holding emotion there.
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. What are some of the most common things that men struggle with in terms of feelings or just mental health struggles in general?
I don't think this is maybe necessarily unique to men, but I think men struggle a lot with just feelings of self-worth, feeling
Hmm.
like they're good enough. Um, something that is so prevalent is the comparison. Like, that's something that we didn't really have to deal with growing up. I mean, we compare ourselves to like kids at school when we saw them, or
Yeah,
our
yeah,
neighbor, when he bought a nice car, would be like, man, he got a nice car. I wish I had that. And that's about as much comparison as you got, or maybe a couple things on TV or a magazine. But the comparison game is no joke. And I
now,
think,
yeah, it's amplified now. Like social
oh,
media makes that much more difficult to manage, I feel like.
and we can see what people are driving, the vacations they're taking, where they live, what they're
Yeah,
doing, their cute kids, their accomplishments, their degrees, their, whatever. And, men have a deep need to feel accomplished, and I think respected, and a deep need to feel desired. And I think those are the areas that, um, and sometimes men feel the most, struggle in.
yeah,
Of course, there's the normal things that, can beset anyone. If I get into bad habits, or that's another vicious cycle. I start doing something that's against my value system,
yeah.
or betraying my value system, and then then the self-worth, starts getting affected, and I can count on depression and anxiety. But it's
Interesting.
it's most likely situational. If I can resolve my if I can get back in line, get myself online and in line with my value system, usually that stuff will correct itself, unless it was there before. That's why I started doing the things that I did.
Hmm.
Kind of an
Yeah,
interesting.
that is really interesting. If you don't mind, maybe I'll put you through a real live practice here.
Let's do it.
So I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, but that is one thing that I struggle with pretty consistently, is the fact of I'll achieve something or I'll work towards something and I'll be like, man, like, what's next? Like, I got to do something else. Like, I don't feel like that was enough. Good example is like when I love running, and I ran my first 50K, which is around 31 miles in Arizona last July. And after I was done, like, it was a huge accomplishment. This is the furthest I've ever ran. But after that, I was like, man, like, it wasn't enough. And it could be because I watch all these ultra marathon runners on social media who do 250 plus miles like all the time. And I don't know if it could be that, but like I'll achieve something, I'll get to a certain point and be like, man, I didn't get to where I want to go. I need to keep going, like that kind of thing. What do you think that is?
I think I don't know exactly, but I have an idea that I think it's that whole thing of learning how to be okay with and celebrate, take time to celebrate our accomplishments before moving on to the next.
Yeah.
Some of us are just highly driven. You may be a highly driven person in certain areas of your life, but sometimes we can drive so hard we can drive ourselves crazy, and we can drive people out of our life if we, or drive people we love crazy too. So
Yeah.
moderation's the game always in mental and emotional health, and figuring out is this just an interest, or is this perfectionism, or is this me
Mm.
comparing myself to what's the standard
Yeah.
that I'm holding myself to, and why? So I think it's worth a analysis, probably, to sit down and think, okay, why am I unsatisfied with
Yeah.
an accomplishment that I have, and why do I struggle to celebrate me
Hmm.
and not wait for the next big thing to happen? So that could be easily remedied by hitting the brakes and
Yeah.
saying, I'm going to celebrate every hard won victory. I've done a lot of school, for instance, and I've had a lot of success and a lot of failure. I've had to retake classes. I failed major exams. Would have been very easy to quit, just like marathon. If I tripped and fell, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, or my time wasn't what I thought. Um, but I'm really grateful that I didn't, because I would not have enjoyed all the learning along the way.
Yeah.
So I think there's a maturity factor to that. Sometimes there's just you know, learning how to stop and smell the roses and all the
Yeah.
things that we do. I don't know that that's always mental anything, but I think it's emotional maturity. And remember, we're in that process. We're technically adolescent until we're 27, which is
Mm.
kind of crazy. Our brain is still forming and figuring out
Yeah.
who we are. We consider adolescence clear into the mid to late 20s. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Huh.
Um, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but it's really important to know that I'm not always my prefrontal, the part of my brain
Yeah.
that's reasons, that says, oh, that's enough, and I'm a good person, and I should probably not say that, and I should
Yeah.
say I'm sorry. That's still forming up until that age. So I can be pretty limbic, which the part of the brain that's just go, 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 fight, flight, heavy emotion. And sometimes we want to hold ourselves, to a standard that maybe our brain's not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
That's
total
another
sense.
thing to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to sit down and do that. I love to journal. And so that might be a good way for me to just think
Yeah.
about that, because I'm working on it. I've definitely gotten better. Like it used to be, you can ask Allie, it was way worse. But now, like, we have done some of those things, like celebrate the small victories and, try and make the most of things. And what's interesting is when like, if we do have failures in the things that we're doing, we try and celebrate those too, because we say, hey, at least we tried and we did our best. Um, but failure is an interesting one. I feel like men deal with that, and women I'm sure do as well, but I feel like men deal with that quite a bit. That feeling of failure, either if they're starting a business and that fails, or if they start a fitness journey and something goes wrong and they don't lose the 20 pounds they said they were going to. Whatever the scenario is, I feel like failure is something that looms in men's minds.
I think so too. And I think failure, you just can't make failure the destination.
Yeah.
Failure is just it's part of the
Yeah.
deal. And I hate it. Nobody loves it. Like, I've never been like, yeah, I'm so glad I failed.
Right.
However, and I always say, if I can ride out the storm, I can always look back and think, I learned something. Here's something I learned from that mistake, that failure, that whatever you want to call it. There's a writer that his name is Viktor Frankl. A lot of people,
I
he
love
wrote,
him.
yeah, and he
Yeah.
always talks about, we can handle any suffering as long as we can attach meaning to it.
Hmm.
So sometimes we have to hold on for the hindsight. We have to hold on for the meaning, because I can look back at really profound, what someone would consider failures in my life. And if I make a meaning out of them, they are manageable. I can put them
Hmm.
someplace and go, okay, that wasn't fun, but
Yeah.
this is something that I learned from it. And I think um, for men, there's a lot of pressure. There's pressure to succeed. There's pressure to even the basics, take care of their family, their kids, their wife, whatever their situation is. Even if they're single, I work with single adults a lot, and they feel an immense amount of, pressure to make a certain amount of money, to have a certain amount of,
Yeah.
and that's hard, and women face their own, some of those and others, but I think one of the things that a lot of men struggle with them, and I think what we call it's like the etiology, like the background to why some men struggle so much with different things often has to do with their inability to connect with other men
Hmm.
healthily. We live in a world that does not. Our connections are so unreal, like
Yeah.
they're through
Very
social
superficial.
superficial. That's the word I'm looking for, and but most mental illness, a lot of even bad patterns, addictions, things like that, are all rooted in unstable attachments, not
Hmm.
having secure attachments. Because the minute I'm imperfect or I mess up, I stop connecting. I shut in.
Interesting.
I shut
Yeah.
down. And the one thing we need to be healthy individuals in this world, based on research, is healthy attachment.
Interesting. Yeah.
Cannot get healthy alone. Have to have good attachment.
That makes total sense. Like, even when I'm super down on the dumps and we go and hang out with some friends, usually we get together with couples. It takes my mind off of it immediately, because you have to be present in that moment and you have to connect with others. And then two, it's like, yeah, they're probably dealing with something similar, and I might say something that they can chime in and be like, hey, well, that might be tough, but here's what I've done, something similar, and here's what I've done. um, just sharing that experience with other people, I think, is crucial. It helped me a ton during my own journey. I didn't really have friends during the time, but like close friends, I would say. But reached out a lot to my brother, to my dad, to Allie, like all these people who I knew loved me and cared about me, and wouldn't mind if I just talked to them for a little bit. But yeah, connection is huge. It makes me sad though, because I know not a lot of people have that support system out there, and they're looking for it.
And they just but we're all out here. We can find it. We just have to get open and awkward and
Yeah,
ask and find your village. Find everybody has to have a village. Your partner's awesome, but if you're not happy with your partner, then you have to have healthy people past that.
yeah,
Um, for men need other men, women need other women, and family members and things like that. So the opposite of emotional struggle is connection for most people,
hmm.
but they don't feel like it when they're in the middle of the struggle. In the middle of the struggle, all they want to do is isolate.
Yeah,
And then you take something like, we've got the whole consequence of COVID and what happened with the pandemic, and we took the one thing away from people, that we need to be healthy. I
yeah,
mean, let's forget all the, even push aside all the medical problems. What we took away was the ability to connect
yeah, yeah,
meaningfully, and that is where we're kind of reaping the consequences of some of that right now. And so the way we counteract that, and men, the way they counteract negativity in their life and struggle with whatever that struggle is to create what we call, find a space where you find common humanity.
hmm.
That's what happened. So if you see a buddy and you're like, man, I'm really struggling. I can't get this business off the ground and I feel like a piece of crap. And you'll be like, dude, I've totally been there. I feel that way too. It's like, it's like an inoculation of for shame,
Yeah,
because you're not alone. You've come out of hiding and you're loved anyway. Like, that's magic. It's
yeah.
just magic.
It really
So
is. Like, you get someone who understands you and what you've been through, and it's a little bit easier to get through it just with someone who's done it before, and you see them where they're at, and you're like, okay, maybe I can push through, and maybe I can learn something during this time that will help me get better. But it's that connection piece that's interesting. I like that.
yeah.
I'm curious what you saw during COVID, actually, because you did bring it up, and now yeah, I want to know what was that like. What was what did COVID do to all of us?
It was it was sad.
Hmm.
Um, Even for therapists, I feel like a lot of my clients that I was working with different things just slipped right back into old patterns because again,
Hmm.
they come out of hiding, they've come out of isolation to get help, and we could no longer connect in the same ways. They could no longer connect. So, um, I don't think we even know the ramifications yet. I think we're just starting to crawl out and see, kind of come up for air,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively. Like, what happened when you shut the world down and you tell people not to go hold the hand of their grandparent as they pass away or something like
Yeah.
what I think we'll probably see consequences. I think connection's the biggest one. Hopefully we'll use it as a teaching, like, oh, I never ever want to find myself in that situation. And
Yeah.
people are important. Um, I work a lot with addiction, and people who have compulsive or addictive or, behaviors are just sublimating. They're trying to cope with life in an unhealthy way, but um, those are off the chart
Hmm.
because they have nowhere to go, nobody to talk to. So the one thing that fuels addiction is isolation.
Man.
So
Yeah, that's tough.
my addict struggled the most. And most people just don't know. Like, you can get out of any negative pattern with good connection. A
Interesting.
therapist is a good start. Obviously,
Yeah.
family is awesome if you have that. But if you don't, we're a family of humanity. Find somebody, find people. There, people are looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to make the first move, right?
That's
Somebody's
true.
got to get
Yeah.
out there. Someone's got to say, I need help. Come, let me take you to dinner. Let's go get a
Yeah.
drink or something. Or let's go. Do you run? Do you play ball? Do you golf? Do you pickleball? Like, what do you do? Like, let's go, let's strike up a friendship.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. And I mean, I saw that myself with some of my friends during that time. Um, unfortunately, they're no longer friends just because they've taken different paths. But a
Right.
lot of it stemmed from COVID, like just being isolated, and like you were saying, I feel like a lot of people just didn't know how to manage their minds during that time. It was a very uncertain time, a lot of fear, I think,
Yeah.
and because of that, like you said, people tried to cope with it in different ways that were unhealthy, and um, yeah, hopefully, we don't see something like that in the future. But yeah, I do see the danger in isolation for sure.
Hopefully we've learned from it. So if
Yeah,
heaven forbid something like that happened, we know we cannot isolate. We cannot be alone. We'll have to
yeah,
figure out a way. I don't know what, but I mean, worst case, we could get online and Zoom or whatever, but that's a very low level of connection,
yeah,
frankly.
yeah,
Like, there's something people will ask me a lot. Do you do Zoom? Like, will you do Zoom? And I'm like, yes, I will do video counseling, but I try and, for me, maybe it could be my age, but I try and make it the exception, not the rule, because there is something about being in a room and being present to somebody else in
yeah,
their struggle that is connecting, and I can see their body language better. I can read things better, and we just connect better. So I'm always grateful. And I have a lot of people who are like, never Zoom. I'll never do it. I'll cancel
yeah.
before I do
I feel like
that.
I'm the same way. Like yeah, I mean, I can see the benefit for Zoom, therapy or connection in that way. If, someone might be scared to go try it for the first time and they just want to get into it that way. But definitely, I think it's beneficial. At least for me. This is me speaking here.
Well,
But
and for some people it works just great. I'm not. I just think that it's different, right? Like, I
yeah,
think that's something new that sort of really emerged out of COVID, was all of the online connecting
yeah,
it, around this stuff. And so, like I said, my age kind of, I'm sure, like, come to my office. Come to my
yeah,
office. I want to see you. I want to see you interact with each other. It's hard for me to see what's going on from
yeah,
behind a screen.
definitely. That's funny. Do you know who Chris Williamson is by chance?
No, I don't
So
think so.
he's another podcaster. He's actually the guy I listened to Dr. Amen on.
Oh, okay.
Um, but he talks about this thing called lower forms of communication. And at the top, obviously, the best way to communicate is in person, so face to face, like you were saying. Second to that would probably be a Zoom call. Second to that would be a phone call. And then it's like email, text, and it just keeps going down that way. But the lower that you go down the list, the less connection you have, or the further you go down. And because of that, like, you're not, if someone sends a text to you and it says okay, that could be read okay or okay
Okay.
or okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like you just don't know, you can't read emotions through texting, unfortunately. And it's easy, it's convenient, but at the end of the day, the best way that we're going to communicate is, if we are sitting together, or however that looks.
As often as we can. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Not
Like,
always possible, but it is the highest form of being
yeah.
in the same place. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Like, my wife and I see that right now. She's based in Mesa. And so for about 3 days of the week, she's down there flying. And it's completely different when we're FaceTiming versus when we're together.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to be able to do that, because otherwise, I wouldn't be able to see her face every day. But it's so much different. And it's not that hard to explain, because I feel like, when you're there, you're present, you're not distracted. And yeah, I think it's something I wish we would do more, is like, hang out and do whatever. So it's interesting you bring
Well,
that up.
yeah, and I know too, like I know my own husband, like there are times when, I can be that person, like I can be that listening board, I can be that like, person that we can talk about things and I can help him through something or vice versa. But
Yeah.
there are times when I'm not it. Like I want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lie. Sometimes I want to and sometimes I don't. But like I'm so grateful that he has enough, like he's created a village of his own, of men
Yeah.
that I know love not just him, they love me as well. So they're never going to talk trash about me, but they'll talk to him, I'm sure, about me. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
what he needs to talk about. But I trust that they're that kind of friend that would actually hold space for whatever. And he comes home sometimes from his golf trip or his pickleball in the morning or whatever, just better,
Yeah.
better able to connect with me because he's got good connection outside of me,
Yeah.
um, from good people that love him and that he loves. And I'm just like, woohoo,
Yeah.
yay, yay. And I try and do the same, right? So we don't put that kind of pressure on the relationship that you're my one and only ever. If you can't be there for me, then I'm not going to be, that
Yeah.
to me, that's putting your neck on the partner in a way that sometimes isn't helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
What are the dangers in that you've seen?
well, I just think it puts a lot of pressure on the partner to fix the other person.
Hmm.
Like they don't know what to do. They love the person, but they love their partner. But if all my joy and my peace is all found in just one person, that's just an awful lot of pressure on one person.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I can see, like, if you do have all your, stability in one person, we can call it, or connection in one person, and that person doesn't have the answer, you feel like you might just hit a brick wall, and you're like, well, there's nowhere to go now. It's like, I'm
Right.
stuck again.
And then
So
they feel like, oh no. And then
yeah.
then you're stuck in the wherever place you're in. I tell couples all the time, like, you want to be really careful that so if you take a partnership and one and the other and you put them together, um, you can put them together like this or you can put them together like this.
Hmm.
They're both just as close.
Yeah.
But this one, sometimes it can get a little tangled and messy. Like if one person's sad, I'm sad. If they're happy, I'm happy. If they're
Hmm. Yeah.
but in this regard, we're like we can lean on each other for support. But if one person is in the pit, then at least there's somebody up here to like throw the rope,
Yeah.
like. So this is just as close. It's just we're there to support each other, but we can't put everything on one person because it puts too much pressure on the relationship. And that's the same with friendships. Like I can't
Yep.
just have one buddy. I gotta have a few.
Yeah.
Because there's a
Yeah.
guy that helps me, at the gym and he gets it. He gets my health goals. And then there's a guy who gets my relationship because he's married too and, has a young family or whatever. And then there's the buddy from work that gets my goals for work. Like sometimes we need a group, like we need a network of people in our lives who are there to support us. Some people are lucky enough and a lot of those people can be family.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that's not the case for, I would say, the majority of people.
Yeah.
That's
Um, I'm sure you've dealt with people who don't have that support system built. Do you suggest any ways to start on that path of like finding those people who you can rely on or anything like that?
Yeah, I when I work with people, I we just start small. Like I said, we start with friends we go to the gym with, we go to church with, we go to school with, work with,
Yeah.
because everybody could look around and go, "Oh yeah, that guy's always been really nice. Like he always buys me a drink, I always go to dinner with him or something, and he's pretty open with me. I just don't really say much to him or her or
Yeah.
whatever." You know, so I think if you look around, you can build and nurture relationships. You just have to sometimes you have to test the water. You know,
Yeah.
I tell people don't jump in the deep end. Don't be like, hey, I just want to tell you about my divorce. Like, like I just want to tell you about my this problem or that problem. But give one little benign, like
Yeah.
just a little, put your toe in the water with them and see if they're a safe person. Do they hold confidence?
Hmm.
Do they give you good feedback? Are they reciprocal in the vulnerability? Do they share things in return, or are
Yeah.
they just taking it in? So, kind of test the water and see if they're a safe person for you, and start small. Find people with common hobbies. That's usually for guys. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
Girls, we can be like, let's go get our nails done, talk about life. And guys, guys tend to have to find guys who share interest, like
Yeah.
they're runners, like you said. They find their running crowd, they find their bikers, they go to the gym, or they have some kind of unique hobby. They like drag racing, or I don't know. They
Yeah.
find the thing that, and then they usually can find friends in those areas. But we will not be healthy without good connections, men or women. We just won't. People with
Yeah.
low connections spend a lot of time in my office
Oh man.
scratching their
Yeah.
head saying, I can't figure out why I feel how I feel. I'm like, so have you talked to anybody about that?
Yeah.
Remember we were going to call somebody and they're like, oh yeah, no, haven't done that. And I'm like, well, I bet you're going to schedule another appointment, because they're
Yeah.
using me as their connection. And because I'm ethical, I won't let them do that for long. But I'm always working towards building their network and working myself out of a job. Every therapist should
Yeah.
be working themselves out of a job.
I like that mindset. Yeah, that's important. Do you think the main reason people don't do that, like, oh yeah, you said you were going to make a phone call. Do you think that's just out of fear, like trusting someone initially, or what's that
Yes,
like?
I think so. And a lot of people, if you've lived in this world long enough, you've had betrayal.
Yeah.
Somebody hasn't kept your confidence, or they've talked about you behind your back, or they haven't shown up when they said they would, because people are fallible.
Yeah.
Um, but we have to recognize I have that trust issue. Heal, do whatever I need to do to heal, work through it. Journal is a great way. Write about it. Talk
Yeah.
about it with someone you trust, and then, but don't quit trusting because someone was untrustworthy.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
There are always good people out there,
Oh yeah.
but there's also going to be bad people out there, and you just have to,
Well,
like
people
you
are in
said.
their own wounds, right? They kind
Yeah.
of they act in their own. It's their own struggle. So if they don't show up or they do something that they shouldn't, it's usually coming from their own injuries.
Hmm.
So when I see people that way, then I don't personalize it quite as much. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
darn, I really hope that would have been a friend, but so it'll be more of an arm's length
Yeah.
acquaintance or something. But we have to keep testing the water and keep pushing towards connection. Always, that will help everything.
Yeah.
Always
I love
does.
that. And it is interesting about like connection and stuff. And you can find connection through hobbies and stuff like that. Like I was talking about with running. One of my friends, he's coming on the podcast on Thursday, but his buddy was running 31 miles for his 31st birthday at a park. And the park was a 1 mile loop. And I didn't know this guy, but my buddy invited me there and I was like, okay, sure. Why not? And I ran 10 miles with this guy. And by the end we were like good buddies. And it's just interesting. It was like, an hour and 20 minutes of just us running around. But at the end we were like, hey, like we should hang out sometime.
Well, you
Um,
have the same interests. Like
yeah.
it's like automatic. You have something that brings you together.
Yeah. And I think it also part of it's like you have to put yourself out there. You have to look for those opportunities. And it could be scary at first, but I love the quote that fear is a mile wide, but an inch deep. Like
Oh
it
yeah.
looks like this huge, scary thing that's in front of you, but once you step into it, you're like, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And you just walk through.
Well, and sometimes we can learn how to embrace the fear. Like the fear is part of what's pushing us. Like,
Hmm.
why do I feel afraid of that? I'll tell people, like, if you're afraid to go to therapy or you're afraid to do this thing or that thing, that's probably your indicator that you need to do it.
Interesting.
To me, it's we either avoid or we embrace, but we can't learn with avoidance. We can only learn with try,
Yeah,
when we try. I have a funny story about running that just occurred to me when you were saying that. My
I'm
son-in-law
ready.
is a distance runner. He's an ultra runner. He's running his first 100 next month, and
Holy cow. Do you know
he's in
where it is? I'm
Oregon,
curious. Oh, wow.
Oregon somewhere. Anyway, he has a cousin who is a runner, and his wife was a very well-known runner. And she was running in New York City. She was there for treatment, cancer treatment. She was running around Central Park, her and her husband. And Chip Gaines was sitting on a bench. I don't know
Hmm.
why he and his wife were there, but
Yeah.
saw them running and stopped him and said, "Hey, I want to learn how to run." And she's like, "Okay." He's like, "Tell who are you?" Anyway, they struck up this friendship,
Yeah.
and she became his trainer when he started to learn how to run. She passed away from her cancer, and he raised tons of money for her
Wow.
foundation, and all from just people willing to put themselves out there and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
doesn't matter who they are." He happened to be a famous person, but I mean, sitting on a park bench, nobody was there. There's no cameras, there's no kids, there's no nothing. He just saw these people running, and they just happened to be, somebody that related to my son-in-law. But I thought it's such a good example of this is how we survive well
Hmm.
in society is we connect, we find common interest and common humanity in each other, and a lot of our mental issues and emotional issues just get swept into and get helped through that. It's not everything, it's not one and done, I'm not saying that, but it's such an important element. Sue Johnson's a big researcher in my field, and she talks all about emotional connection and attachment and secure attachment and what that has to do with relationships and individual mental health.
Hmm.
So I very much resonate with her work, and as I see people make good connections and start to do that, their life just improves.
Yeah.
It just improves. It's not everything, but it's a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing. And for me, it's almost like you become, like you said, more emotionally mature, and you become more familiar with these feelings that you do have, and you're able to manage them a lot better. And some of that is like, okay, I need to reach out to Brian at work because he understands what I'm dealing with there, or Johnny at the gym, wherever it is. Like
Whatever.
having these people to help you at least gives you more ammo to be able to deal with it yourself and to learn from it.
That's right.
Um, because like I talked about at the beginning how I've had mental health issues, um, and I wouldn't say they're 100% gone or like cleared up, but I'm definitely better able to like manage them and be like, okay, well, I'm feeling kind of angry. Like, did I sleep okay? Did I not sleep okay? Like, what did I eat today? And just trying to understand like what happened throughout my day that might have led to those feelings, and then be like, okay, well, I know it'll end, and I know I'll be fine tomorrow. So, hey, it's okay.
Yes.
It's temporary.
That kind of sparked an idea, though. Another really important piece of managing emotion is creating structure and balance
Hmm.
in the key areas of life. So, most times when we're struggling a lot with something, you can look at, I have people, one of the tools that I give people, like right out of the chute, is I have them do what I call dailies. I have
Hmm.
them focus on five areas of their life: emotional, physical, personal, physical, spiritual,
Hmm.
relational. Four. I do so many of these. That's what I have to do. Four. And they set two
Yeah.
goals in each of those areas. So personal are like goal, like interests and hobbies and things like that. Physical, obviously, is their body, sleep, diet,
Yeah.
grooming, whatever. Spiritual is whatever their spiritual practice is, their connection with their higher power. And then relational connections with others. So I
Hmm.
have them set two goals that and they might already be doing some of them, but I have them be very intentional and track those two things they do every day in those areas. And if they come in and they're off kilter, I'll say, "Tell me about your dailies." And they tell me the same two words every time. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. I forgot about those.
I'm like, okay. So, and I think about it too in my own life, like, and I adjust those as needed. Like you said, like, we have to be good stewards over the one thing we have, which is us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We are stewards over us. So if I'm doing too much work and not enough connection with the people that matter, I'm going to have a problem. Too
Hmm.
much playtime and not enough spiritual practice is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
You know, not if I'm doing too much work and too much church, but not enough like hobby and the things that make me me, I'm going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So I have a colleague that says life really is like trying to stand up in a canoe in rough water without
Hmm.
paddles. Like you're
Yeah.
constantly you're constantly shifting your weight, trying not to go over. And sometimes we go over, get back in the boat, but just realize like, balanced minds require balanced behavior. We have to
Hmm.
create a structure that will support our mental and emotional health.
Yeah.
So look into my life and say, what am I doing for myself physically every day on purpose? Like I try and evaluate those every Sunday and I set them for the next week. And
Hmm.
I'm going to have to get extra sleep this week because I have extra hours, or I'm going to have to make sure that I'm eating because I'm eating during the day, or I'm eating the right snacks during the day because of
Yeah.
whatever. Or I need to make sure that I'm reaching out to friends this week, or talking to my kids, or talking to my spouse, or whatever. Like, we have to do that on purpose, not happenstance, because structure and balance will just create balance.
Yeah. I love that. I believe that, you cannot improve what's not being tracked.
Yeah,
And I feel like this is a great start to be like, okay, well, like you said, those four areas, I'm going to set two goals in each one and I'm going to revisit them because,
they change.
yeah, exactly. And you can see that. I always like, I coach a couple different athletes in running. And I always tell them, I'm like, you got to just track it all, like show your stats from last week, put the numbers in there, because there will be days when you're discouraged. But then I want you to go back and look from 3 to 4 weeks ago and see that, you are improving, you're getting better. And, if it's a weight loss thing, then, hopefully you are losing weight if you're staying consistent. But it's always like for me, being able to track something and then go back and revisit it shows me that hopefully I'm getting better. And then two, if there is progress, like where can I double down and improve even more or whatever that looks like. But I love that. That's a great exercise.
Yeah,
Um,
it's simple and everybody should do it.
yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're a struggler or not. Just, I think the world we live in really creates the temptation to be out of balance in a lot of
Mm.
ways. I can find myself droning out on social media for like flat out. I'll look and the time is 30 minutes has passed, and I'm like, how did that happen? Um, but if I am holding myself to account and giving myself some, making sure that I'm counterbalancing those kind of temptations just to lean too far on one corner of that canoe and throw
Yeah.
myself over, um, then I will manage what life throws at me just a little bit better.
Mm.
Um, I just will be able to handle the work stress, the relationship stress, the health stressors, the money
Yeah.
stressors, whatever it is that you know come at us. But that, like I said, that's a baseline assignment I give almost, well, I would say probably every one of my clients. Like you can't come to me and
And
like you
not
can
get
do
that.
magic in 45 minutes and then you're going to
Yeah.
leave and be like, I got it. It's about how you practice at home. And the insight you get when you're with me should be the icing on the cake of the cake you're already building,
Yeah.
you know, in your life. So,
Do
and
you have any other
therapists.
tools that you recommend for that?
Um, that's my big one. I call that dailies. I do a lot. Depends on what the issue is. Um, that's the big one for balance. Sometimes I give couples, I do a lot of couples work, so I give them tools on how to communicate about things.
Yeah.
I love Gottman's work, Mary and John Gottman. I just think they're amazing. They've done some
Mm.
amazing work with couples. Um, but I would say, I would say, get good connection, create balance, and by creating routine and structure in your day, make sure that relational connections are in there. Have accountability. Have people who can hold your feet to the fire but love you the same. You know,
Yeah.
um, and get help when that, if that doesn't help and you are doing everything that you can, then that's what we're for.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trained to do. So then we can start kind of figuring it out, analyzing and figuring out. It may be chemical, it
Mm.
may be maybe something's going on with the body, something else is going on with the body. People will come in with extreme levels of depression. I will send them to their doctor first. I want full blood panel. I want thyroid test.
Mm.
I want to do that and rule that out first. Hormone test,
Yeah.
those kind of things, like what you were mentioning, because that's not something you can just will yourself.
Right.
Your
Yeah, you
body.
can't. Yeah, as much as you would like to, it's almost impossible. Like I wanted to believe I could so bad, and um, I love what you said about like this. The world doesn't really preach balance. Like it wants you to be unbalanced. Because when I was first in college, I told you like I follow all these Navy SEAL guys, and they're always about like go go go, like push yourself as hard as you can.
Goggins method.
Yeah, exactly, David Goggins. And I was like, okay, well that's how I have to be if I want to be a successful person. And I quickly like I don't burnout's probably the best way I can explain it. But within like 3 years, I like developed all these weird, um, I guess, mental and emotional issues. I think just because I tried suppressing everything I was feeling so I could just be productive. And it's interesting. Like I look back now and I'm like, that was the wrong way of dealing with it. But I'm glad I have that understanding now.
Well, and now
Um,
you know what not to do. Next time
yeah,
you feel a certain way, you'll be like, "Oh, I tried that.
yeah,
That didn't
yeah,
work.
exactly.
I'll try it this way."
Right. So it's
That's
pretty interesting. But um, I am curious because I feel like a lot of men, like we've talked about, just don't know how to ask for help. And that can be a scary thing. I know men are more, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're 4 times more likely to commit suicide than
I
women.
don't know the exact stat, but I know um, they use more lethal means,
Hmm.
and they're more successful at it when they do.
Yeah.
Generally,
So if someone's not, ready to ask for help, are there common signs that loved ones can look for to, spot if something might be wrong with someone? And if so, what should that person do to offer help, if any?
yeah, that's really tricky. It's tricky because um, when you're dealing with an adult, you don't have a lot of control,
Yeah.
meaning the control lies with them. But isolation is one of the first. Shutting in, not connecting with or reaching out to or engaging like they normally um, would be a huge red flag for a big problem. That would be number one. Um, what they say, how they talk, are they out of sorts? Do they talk about um, do they talk? Is it a dark conversation? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Is it
Yeah.
negative about themselves or others? Um, that's another one. I mean, there's some others depending. Are they financially failing? Are they relationally failing? Like what's going on? And for families, sometimes you have to take extreme measures to save somebody. I just flat out ask. I'm just
Mm.
that person. I'm just like, are
Yeah.
you feeling suicidal? Do you want to hurt yourself? Or are you feeling, and oftentimes people are shocked that I ask it because most people dance around it.
Yeah.
Um, they don't want to offend the person, and I'll take the risk because I will do whatever if there's someone I love to save them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I would say ask the question, do it gently, do it kindly, like find your avenue, but
Yeah.
are you feeling this way? Are you feeling that way? How far have you gone with those thoughts? Have you made a plan?
Yeah.
You know, suicidality is one of the saddest because, it's a hard battle with depression,
Yeah.
extreme depression. But um, like I said, I always go in the front door. Like I'd love to have you in my life for a long time, even if you
Yeah.
don't want you in my life. So what can I do to help? Do you need me to check in with you? Do you need, you know, there's lots of resources. You can always just go to the ER. You can go,
Yeah.
there's what's mind, there's the emergency now. I'm trying to remember what it's called. They're open 24/7, like an ER, but for mental health.
Hmm.
Mind, I'll figure out what it is and send it to you, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
been really, really helpful for people in an emotional crisis.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes people just need someone to talk to. And sometimes they need intervention. They need a doctor. They need meds. They need something in the interim until they can get the help that they need.
Yeah.
It's scary. Mental health is kind of scary because a lot of people just don't know what to expect.
Right.
They're like, what are they going to tell me? Something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Are they going to tell me things I don't want to hear? They're going to make me do stuff I don't want to do. Um, and most of the time when people come in, I'm like, well, I'm not the expert in your life. You are. What,
Yeah.
So I don't, I have some education and some knowledge and I'll shine lights, here and there and give you some ideas, but it's your job to take the path that, you
Yeah.
know,
And I love that. No, I appreciate you going into that a little bit because that's something that's definitely become something I'm passionate about. Because, like you're saying, like it's sad to see someone just throw their life away because they can't get out of these cycles that we've talked about, or they feel like they're broken and there's nothing that they can do to fix it. And so it makes me pretty sad, but I know that there is ways that we can um, help influence for the better.
and we don't
But
give up. We save the
right,
people we love the best way, and we can use our best efforts, and it's not our fault if things go another way either. But mental health and mental crises are just like a physical crisis, just like a heart
yeah,
attack or a stroke or anything else. It can be just as deadly and just as dangerous to experience. So, what would I do if my loved one had cancer, or
yeah,
I'd go to the ends of the earth looking, trying to help them, trying to find doctors.
right,
That's what we do. It doesn't matter what the illness is. And if you're a man struggling with any sort of emotional distress, or you just can't overcome feelings or thoughts, number one, you have to know you're not alone.
yeah,
You are not alone. Um, Many men feel that way at different points in their life. It usually passes. It usually doesn't stay. Um, I always tell people emotions have a shelf life. Just give it its
mm,
time. It won't last forever, even though it feels like it will in the
yeah,
moment. Um, so do whatever you need to do to get through that day, that moment, that minute. Um, but you're not alone, and there is help. Don't be afraid to call a professional. We're not all, and interview your professional. Like,
hmm,
find out who they are. Like, what do they, do they specialize in men's issues? What do they specialize in, this or that? Will they meet your need?
hmm,
And just because you don't like them the first visit or two doesn't mean they're not right for you.
yeah,
Sometimes I
yeah,
can be, I can be a little assertive with, I've been doing this a long time, and people be like, oh no, I'm like, don't leave. I got
yeah.
you.
Sometimes
I
it's good to hear though. Like sometimes um, I feel like that's another thing that this world is really good at is like tiptoeing around the actual issue.
yes.
But you just gotta attack it head on sometimes. So I think men especially would probably appreciate that.
I
Um,
think so. And I
uh,
tell them, and you might not be the right person, and it's okay. Interview them, find out what their specialties are, find out, who they work with and how long they've been doing it. And,
yeah,
look at reviews online. Everybody's reviewed. See, if
that's
and
true.
get a referral from somebody you know. If you have a buddy or two, say, have you ever seen a therapist or know anybody that has?
Yeah,
Ask me for a friend. No.
yeah, yeah.
you know?
Asking for a friend.
But like, do you have any ideas? Because I could really use. And so sometimes people you trust will know people. I have so many people that will call me and say, "Hey, my uncle was your neighbor. and said you seem pretty cool and I'm looking for
Yeah.
somebody. I'm like, oh, okay, so
Like,
um,
sweet.
ask around. That's the best way to find somebody, I think. Psychology Today is usually pretty reliable.
Hmm.
It breaks down people's specialties. They're pretty vetted. Therapists on Psychology Today is a good place to find someone as well. But
Awesome.
look for issues, ask them, this is what I'm struggling with. Do you have any training in any modalities that can help me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think that's good. Like, do your own due diligence. Um, but I'm curious to what you would say, because this was my issue before going into therapy, is what would you say to someone who's afraid of being judged by their therapist?
yeah. Um, Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
I would think most therapists, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I will tell people, even in my intake, look, I am just not a judgmental person. It just isn't in my nature.
Yeah.
But you might, if you feel judgment, then you need to ask, you just need to tell me that. Because what goes on in the therapy office sometimes is a microcosm in life. That's the way I show up in life, right?
Hmm.
And so I'll say, if you have resistance to things like that I say or that's going on, that's probably happening outside of here. So let's just address it. Just tell me. Like, I feel
Yeah.
judged right now, or I feel weird telling you that because I feel like you're going to think I'm weird, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and then we can talk through it. But I would say push through that fear
Hmm.
and find somebody that you feel comfortable with that has the skill set to help you. Um, your therapist will not know everything, nor should they. That is not, I am not an all knowing guru of, but I do have like a few skills that sometimes are helpful to people,
Yeah.
specific people. I love working with men. I work with adult men all the time. I think the bravest men that I know have sat on my couch
Hmm.
and are working through a variety of issues, whatever they are. But I think just to even put themselves in that situation tells me how courageous they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's how I feel. I have a lot of respect for, because I know it's awkward and I know it's uncomfortable and probably not where they want to be.
Right. Right.
They're probably
It's
thinking that,
tough. It really is hard. Like, it's what we were talking about at the beginning. Like, we've never been taught this emotional language that we really need to express ourselves, and having someone on the other end who can help you walk through that,
Mhm.
it's honestly game changing. Like, it helped me so much. And like, now I still see a doctor about every 3 months. I'll talk to him, and it just helps me be like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And he'll be like, all right, well, do this or do that. Or like, hey, great job here, but maybe you could work on this area. And it's just like, it's good to have someone who's seen things like this before, but knows how to manage it and has also seen those same people get better.
That's right.
And so I think it's just, yeah, like I would agree with what you said. Step into that fear, because what's on the other side is far greater than what you'd expect.
And what do you have to lose?
Right. Right.
If you're living in some sort of internalized hell, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Other than a little money and time, probably that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's fair. That's
but
fair. But it's
but
worth it.
if they're an ethical therapist,
Yeah.
then they're going to tell you, how do I get you out of here? Let's get you out of here. Let's get you into living. What
Yeah.
can I do to help you get there? And walk that journey with them. That relationship shouldn't be forever.
Yeah.
You know, it should be for that time.
Well,
So, um, like I said, I have a lot of respect for men who put themselves in that vulnerable, because it's not comfortable for most,
yeah.
and it's not been taught how to do that. It just has not been taught or modeled,
Mm.
um, not by any fault per se of anyone, but my dad still calls me a shrink. He bless his heart. He's 84 and I'm a shrink, and that's
Hey,
fine. I don't even know what a shrink is, but
yeah. I don't.
apparently,
I've never understood that term either. If that helps.
but generationally, that's what they were called. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and so I love to see people embracing mental health and figuring out, love that. And I love to see men do it, because they're living in the same craziness that all the rest of us are. And
Right.
I think all of us want to be as healthy as we can be, and um, I just think that there's a lot of resources out there. You just have to go find them.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, just step into the fear. Just embrace it. It's okay. No one, most people don't die from being afraid. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, humans have been afraid, for thousands of years. So, hey, it's okay. If people
Kind
have
of
done
like
it in the
the
past.
caveman thing to do. Just go in the cave.
Yeah,
Just get in
exactly.
there.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So,
But yeah, no, I appreciate everything we've talked about today. I think it's been helpful for me, and hopefully it's helpful for someone out there who might be listening and just needs a little reassurance that that next step isn't as scary as they might think it is. Um, but yeah, before we wrap up, anything else that you want to share or leave with the audience before close out?
well, I think I didn't really address it, but there are some things that will require help. You won't do it on your own. I'm just going to say that as flat out as I can. Um, I work in addiction. I work with process addictions. So I work with basically things that are already systems inside of us. Like I work with sex addiction a lot. So sex is a system inside of us, but it's
Yeah,
also, it can be used in such a way that creates compulsivity and can injure, can kind of create a problem in the reward center of the brain. But
yeah,
um, most people do not typically overcome that alone.
hmm,
We know that that is based, there's a pattern for those things. Um, and you're not broken because you can't fix it on
yeah.
your own.
I mean,
Um,
what's that quote? Isn't it addiction thrives in isolation
yes.
or
And
secret,
the
something like
opposite of
that?
addiction is connection, like that whole
Yeah,
connection piece we talked about. But I just want to say, like, a lot of people are living in that. They're living in that, promise themselves, let themselves down, feel like crap, do it again, promise themselves, let themselves, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah, you know. Um, and that cycle, that addiction cycle, is, we know how to treat that. That is something we know how to treat. Um, so if you're caught in the cycle or any cycle of negative patterns of behavior, that just happens to be the one that I do, but um, there is hope and there is healing and there is help. And don't let it ruin your relationships. Don't let it ruin you.
yeah.
Um, don't let it take any more time than it has. When you're ready, um, find a professional that knows how to do it. And the reason why we do that is we're seeking connection.
Hmm.
We're just seeking it pathologically through a bottle, through a porn, through a this, through that. Doesn't,
Yeah.
we're like a bird running into a window, though. You'll knock yourself out every time.
That's a good
You won't
analogy.
get what you're looking for. It looks
Yeah.
really great. Like, this is the window.
Then you're
Um,
gone.
then you're
Just kidding.
knocked out and you're like,
Yeah.
dang it. I
You
thought
wake
that
up,
was,
you're like, what happened?
oh my gosh. Um, and it's also not about sex. It's not about drugs. It's not about any of that. It's always about there's always emotional undercurrents and needs
Yeah.
for attachment. So I just want to say that, the offset, because that is the struggle of that struggle is, those struggles are so pervasive
Yeah.
culturally. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people in my own life who have dealt with addiction, different types, but it's sad to see.
yeah,
And, it's tough for them to reach out because I feel
it's
like,
shameful.
yeah, exactly. But the thing that you said that like I think is the key piece here is like there is hope. There's hope
Oh,
for a better future. There's hope like you can overcome this.
well, and I
And
tell
it's
people
just
all the time, I would have quit my job long ago if I didn't see people get better. Like, I
hmm,
get the window into healing, or it would have been the worst job on the
yeah,
planet. It would be terrible. But
yeah,
I get to not just see healing, I get to see thriving.
hmm,
And that is a pretty powerful experience.
yeah,
So I just want to, yeah, hope it's a journey. It's not going to be easy per se, but being in it isn't easy either.
yeah.
So find somebody who can help you and move on with your life, and figure out how to feel,
I
how to
love it.
deal with feelings for what they are.
That's great advice for anyone out there, myself included. So
Me too.
yeah. But yeah, Kim, I appreciate you really taking some time to come on the podcast today and share some thoughts about this just because like I said, I'm passionate about it and I know many other people out there struggle with their own mental health challenges, and um, hopefully we are making the move in the right direction to allow it to be more common in terms of like helping out in regular conversations. But yeah, I mean, some of these tools and things I think will help the audience. So I really appreciate your time today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for the opportunity and for shedding a light on something we don't talk about enough. So thank
Of
you.
course. Yeah, absolutely. And everyone else for listening, thank you so much. And as always, keep getting after it.